Shalom Alechem, Assalamu Alaikum, Irini Mazisu, Pax Vobiscum. Peace be unto you. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be starting a new book. We've had a long layoff. It is going to be, well, before we start the book, let me just do this video for the purpose of explaining why we're not going to call it what it usually is called, which is the first book of Samuel. When we look at the Septuagint, again, which predates the Masoretic text by hundreds of years, maybe even 1,000 years, maybe even more than 1,000, well, in any case, circa 250 BC, and then you have the Masoretic, which came around 600 or 700 AD, was finally completed in the first millennium. So you do have quite a discrepancy there. Yeah, it's at probably around 1,000 years difference. And the Septuagint does not call it the Book of Samuel. Most early... It's okay. Sorry for the disturbance there. So it's called first... Okay, I don't know if I'm going to get this video out here. So as I'm talking about, I'm trying to do videos, and then I've got problems like that, noise right there. A lot of disturbances around me. So, hold on a sec. Okay. So yeah, they're popularly known as, commonly known as the first book of Samuel, second book of Samuel. However, this was not always so. If we look at, I hate to use Wikipedia, but I'm going to do it. First and second Samuel were actually a single book originally, but the first Greek translation, what we use in this channel, our primary source of the original scriptures inspired by Elohim, written in Hebrew but just translated into Greek, was divided into two. So they adopted this format. By the Latin translators adopted this format. Used in the early Christian Church of the West. Finally introduced into Jewish Bibles around the 16th century. So they imitated the format of the Septuagint, commonly known as 1 Samuel and 2 Samuel. So that's how it is known today. However, in many early versions of the Bible, we look at King James, like 1611 King James, and before that, they are commonly known as 1 Kings, 2 Kings, not things, 3rd Kings, and 4th Kings. So not Samuel. So this video is just to explain the name of why we're not going to call it the Book of Samuel. In fact, you see the title right at the top there, the header, First Book of the Kingdoms. So the Hebrew text that is used by Jews today, called the Masoretic text, differs considerably from the Hebrew text that was the basis of the first Greek translation, aka the Septuagint. So Wikipedia pretty much supports this channel being, not this channel, but the Septuagint translation being the original version of scriptures, being the most accurate and truthful version of scriptures, which again has more authenticity than the Masoretic text, which bluntly, to be blunt, is corrupted. Let's just put it that way. It's been a corrupted text. There's a lot of changes, modifications, omissions, additions. The things that were written of in Revelation not to do, they do. Do not remove from the text, do not add to the text. And just plain and simple does that. Okay. If we look at the term that is used, it is, or the title, the name being used in the Septuagint, it is the Greek basileon, and for the first book it is Alpha. So A. If we look at the translation of that word basileon, it literally means palace or perhaps kingdom, but it's only giving us palace. However, when we look at this entry in Wikipedia, Books of the Kingdoms, it says names of the books, or I should say the 4 books of the Hebrew Bible given in the Septuagint. 1st and 2nd Kingdoms are equivalent to 1st and 2nd Samuel, and 3rd and 4th Kingdoms are equivalent to 1st and 2nd Kings in most modern English versions. These books are known in the Vulgate. It seems like repetition, but I'm going to say it, just reiterate it. These books are known in the Vulgate version as the 4 books of the kingdoms, Libri Regnum or Regnorum, or the books of kings, Liber Regum, as Jerome disagreed with the expression books of the kingdoms that was originally coined Libri Renorum in the Septuagint. So this is Jerome's explanation, his rationale. 3rd comes Samuel, which we call the 1st and 2nd Kings. 4th Malachim, that is contained in the 3rd and 4th books of Kings. It is much better to say Malachim of kings than Malachoth of kingdoms, for it does not describe the kingdoms of many peoples, but of one Israelite people, which included 12 tribes. So that's his rationale. And then the last line here, those books are known as the books of reigns in the New English translation of the Septuagint. Interestingly, I do own that. That's the very first version of the Septuagint I actually obtained, but I prefer the Brenton's, namely because I believe it was in the Psalm 40 verse 6, which is the verse that started it all, started me on this journey. I believe it was not translated accurately in the nets. We call it the nets, some people do. So that's why I I do prefer the Brenton's, because it does contain that messianic prophecy. Okay, so I think that's all to explain the name of the book. Why is it we're not using Samuel? Why is it that it's not even called Samuel in the early King James? In the 1611 King James, it is called 1st Kings, 2nd Kings, and so on. But when you dig deeper, it's actually not even called 1st Kings and 2nd Kings. It's actually called Books of the Kingdom. So that's why I am going to employ this title, First Book of the Kingdoms, and so on until the end. So thank you for your attention. Sorry for the noise at the beginning. Trying to train this dog, but it's a bit of a challenge. So thank you very much. I try not to lose my cool, but when you're disciplined, whether it's a child or an animal, you have to be firm but fair. So thank you very much for your attention. This is simply a brief explanation of the book title and why we're going to be using First Kingdoms, or First Book of the Kingdoms, going forward. But however, I need to put this disclaimer that we will be using 1 Samuel because that is what people are familiar with. Otherwise, people will not know what we're doing or talking about. So that is the mainstream reckoning. That is what people are familiar with. We will use that in the thumbnails only, because that's what people are familiar with. So that is to simply draw people into the videos, but once they get into the video, they will see the correct title, and this is the video that explains why we're doing so. So thank you once again. Hope this is not too long, and this explains everything and sets the record straight, why we're doing this, and the reasonings behind that, to retain the ancient name and accuracy. I just think that's part of my detail. When I look at details, I'm very detail oriented, and that's part of our quality assurance, you could say, quality control. We want to make sure that we are using the most accurate names. But again, for the sake of the thumbnail and titles, I will use 1 Samuel. But we'll have this once they clicked into the video, and you'll see that the real title, not I'm going to say the pseudo fake title. So that's all for this one. Tune in for the actual beginning of the series, which will dive into 1 Samuel 1, aka first book of the kingdoms, chapter 1. So until next time, Shalom Aleichem, Assalamu Alaikum, Irini Mazisu, and Pax Vobiscum. Peace be unto you. Maranatha.